Hello and welcome to our session on dual language implementation. Today we're going to cover the second stage, which is planning, how to plan for this implementation. And we have myself, Elena Sada, from Boston College, Program Director of the Twin Network. And Larkin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Larkin Tenney. I'm the principal of Holy Family Bilingual Catholic School in Seattle, Washington. And I have been a dual language principal for the past 7 years.
Thank you. So as we said last time, there's this QR code is for the article that Dr. Fuller and I wrote on implementing dual language education. You can scan it for reference. So a reminder about how we fit in all these important concepts within dual language Catholic education. We have our Christian faith as a foundation and our frame. We have a solid organization, which is key, a true community of practice that takes thoughtful and informed risks that work together. And then we seek these three additional goals that all dual language schools, even the non-faith-based, share: high academic achievement, sociocultural competence, bilingualism, and biliteracy. We also pursue the goal of faith, of Christian faith. And then we also include within sociocultural competence 4 main domains: identity affirmation, appreciation for diversity, interpersonal collaboration, and critical consciousness. So as I mentioned, this is the second stage. We talked about exploration, in which we answer the question, is dual language for us? And are we ready for dual language? And the second stage is planning, and we answer the question, why are we ready and why are we not? So what needs to happen for us to be ready for dual language Catholic education? So we thought of these 6 steps as part of our planning stage. First, we define and expand our team, our inquiry team, if needed. So we already talked about in the exploration stage about creating a team, but now we look at our design as our team as a design team. So it's a team that's going to plan. So we have not had equal representation at this point. It's very important that we have it. The second stage is, the second step is look at our personnel. So we determine recruitment and the training needs of our personnel. We already surveyed the personnel, we met with the faculty, so we now are ready to create a plan, a medium and long-term plan, short as well, for the teachers that we will retain, hopefully we'll retain all of them, because dual language, as we know, goes 1 year at a time. So we don't need to let anybody go, and we simply take advantage of the natural turnkey or the natural attrition to create our team. So we'll mainly look at our training needs. So what are the general sessions that our team will need as faculty for the school? And then the training that the pre-K and K teacher will need in order to start in the fall. We also redefine our vision, mission, and goals with all stakeholders. We develop the program model and language allocation, and we'll talk about these 2 steps closely. And then we choose and develop a curriculum, instructional mapping, and resources. Finally, we develop an ambitious bilingual marketing plan. So Larkin, do you want to take it from here in our first step of leadership and community engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, my name is Larkin Tenney. I'm the principal at Holy Family Bilingual Catholic School. And as I talk through some of these elements in the process, I'm going to use some of my experience and some of the things that I've seen as a principal who has done some modifications of dual language programs. I think it's important to note that when I began as principal at Holy Family, I inherited a dual language program that had already been started. However, however, I have done a lot of program modifications, and so I'm going to talk through some of those to provide some examples. So first and foremost, it's important to look at why your dual language program and who are the people that are driving this decision. And the example that I'll use is with Holy Family. The main reason was that there was a decline in enrollment in the Catholic school at Holy Family. And so the current leader and school commission at that time decided that we should have a dual language program because that could increase enrollment and provide a unique model that would set us apart from other Catholic schools. It's really important that the reason for the dual language program is to meet the needs of the community, and that there is community input, and that it's not just driven by increase in enrollment or by financial, although that is a benefit, but making sure that the team of people making these decisions, making the decision to transition to a dual language program is robust, that all stakeholders are involved. Teachers are in support, community members are in support, the parish is in support, and that the team really reviews, is there anyone else who should be a part of this team and who should be at the table? Because just in my experience, what happened at Holy Family before my time as principal is that this wasn't as strategic of an initiative, and it actually led to a further decline in enrollment because people didn't feel like they had a seat at the table, and not all opinions were valued and influenced in this decision.
Thank you. And what about the quality personnel and professional development?
So I think it's really important, having people involved is just having them aware of what dual language is, what this is going to look like, how this is going to change the school. I think it's really important to provide research on what dual language looks like, what are the outcomes of dual language, and why this would be a fit for the community that it's serving. I think some of the most powerful professional development is approaching students from kind of a cultural and linguistic asset-based mentality, meaning that we're going to value the language that students bring, and we're going to see our Spanish-speaking students and English-speaking students, for what they can bring, which is, their strong language in English or Spanish, their cultural experiences that can really help strengthen the three pillars of dual language education. It's also important to consider the faculty at the school. Is the faculty at school open-minded? Is the faculty aware? Has the faculty been able to provide input into what about this school could yield to dual language? Is the faculty already well-versed in strategies for language learners? Because, serving a multilingual community, engaging in kind of a SIOP model and GLAD strategy, sheltered instruction, all of those are really important to serve all language learners. And as a dual language program, you're serving language learners in both English and in Spanish. And then finally, what's the knowledge of dual language for the teaching? If you've got teachers that are approaching this feeling like they're going to have to teach the same thing in English that they teach in Spanish, then there's a little more knowledge that needs to be acquired on what dual language is and what it looks like. And the way to go about that, in my experience, is to have teachers observe at other dual language program schools, spend the day in a dual language classroom and ask questions about what dual language is, and then get their feedback on what that could look like at your school and in their classrooms. Ask the teachers what they would like to add to the dual language classrooms. Having teachers as co-creators really will strengthen the program. People believe in what they create, and by having input, these teachers who know the students, know the school, know the community, can really strengthen the dual language program at your school. And also knowing that there's no kind of cookie cutter approach to dual language. Dual language can be molded and changed, and we've certainly seen that at Holy Family to meet the needs of the community. And then finally, all of the professional development and the resources, and I'll talk about that in a minute, really does require a considerable amount of funding. So making sure that you've secured funding, not just for this kind of initiation of a dual language program, but also to sustain the dual language program, to be able to integrate new curricula that are, meet kind of research-based approaches to dual language and best practice for dual language.
Thank you. So together with those two important steps of the leadership, the inquiry team, and the preparation of the faculty, we need to redefine our vision, mission, and the goals. So the school already have, if it's an existing school, if it's a new school, of course, we create them. So if they have current vision, mission, and goals, and a unique Catholic identity, we look into it. So what is the history of the school? What is the vision? And then we tweak it to include the goals of dual language. So words like aspects of equity, aspects of asset-based are two very important elements that have to be part of the vision and the mission. And of course, you bring back the answers to the questions, why are we considering dual language, that Larkin was referring to at the beginning. We bring back the answers to those questions because that will give us an idea of what to include in our vision. What's our dream for a dual language school, and what is the community's dream? So as we said in one of the previous sessions, a systems goals with unit systems, how to align. So the sub-communities within the larger community, the goals have to be aligned. So we bring the dreams of everyone within this new creation of vision, mission, and goals. And then a very important step is the program model and the language allocation. And we look at the culture of the school, the resources that we have, the population of the school. We consider the goals of academic achievement, bilingualism, and sociocultural competence. And with that in mind, that's how we create, we determine the scope of the language, if it's going to be school-wide or strand. Most schools do school-wide because of the size of the school. It's much more effective. And the language allocation. And Larkin will talk a little bit about what that looks like, this 90-10 and 50-50. And then, of course, the student population. Are they all English learners? Are they native English speakers? Are all bilingual learners, or is it a mix? And we will discuss that as well. So Larkin, do you want to talk a little bit about what a 50-50 model is?
Yeah, and you know, for schools that are considering the implementation of a dual language program, it is really important to look at and kind of interview and speak to principals of dual language program schools about what program model they have, what their language allocation is, and why they have that program model. And I think a lot of it has to do, like Elena mentioned, with staffing and with resources. And I'll use Holy Family, for example. When I began at Holy Family in 2016, we had a 50-50 model program that was with team teachers. That means we had a K1 team where they would switch halfway through the day. We had a 2-3 team, and then we had our preschool was kind of half the day in English and half the day in Spanish, self-contained. That was largely due to staffing. When the school implemented the program, they realized that staffing, they wanted to keep a lot of their current staff members who were, on teaching the English side, and then recruit and retain highly qualified bilingual teachers who would teach the Spanish side. And that worked well. However, we quickly realized that with our school community and our program, that self-contained dual language classes would be a better fit. And so whereas a 50-50 would be half the day in English and half the day in Spanish, most schools, they have the transition between content. So they'll have certain content areas in English and then certain content areas in Spanish. And current best practice states to have language arts in both English and Spanish. So that means students are learning reading and writing in both English and Spanish, but they may learn math in English and science in Spanish, social studies in English, and then religion in Spanish, for example. And then certain teachers would teach certain content areas. So if you had a team teacher with a 50-50 model program, you would have, the kindergarten, like it says here on the map, would have English, and social studies and maybe religion in the morning with their first teacher, and then they would swap, and the Spanish teacher would start with Spanish language arts, do math, and then science, for example, and then they would switch back the next day. I've also seen models where you have self-contained 50-50, so that the teacher is teaching their whole class all day long, but they are a bilingual teacher able to teach in both English and Spanish. So you don't have team teaching. One of the benefits of a 50-50 model program is just that. It is really challenging to recruit and retain highly qualified bilingual teachers who have a heritage level of Spanish instruction. That's a challenge. And so by kind of a team teaching model, you're able to retain some current staff members who are not able to teach in Spanish, and they can work as a team. Team teaching requires built-in time in scheduling to make sure that the two teachers are on the same page and advancing towards the acquisition of Common Core standards, to make sure that they are bridging content areas so that students are learning kind of in both languages and transferring skills that they're learning from English to Spanish. So it does require a lot of intentional collaborative meeting time in the day for that.
Thank you.
A 90-10 model program, which is what we have currently at Holy Family Bilingual. The terminology we use is that it kind of front loads the Spanish. And so, for example, our pre-K class, our Forest classroom in California, they say it would be a TK class, is a 90-10 model. So 90% of the day is all taught in Spanish. However, that language arts piece, English language arts, is taught both in English and in Spanish. So our students that are getting ready for kindergarten learn all day in Spanish up until the very last hour where they do English language arts. Our kindergarten class, for example, does an 80-20 model. And so they are in Spanish. They add an additional 10% of English to English language. They have longer English language arts class. However, all the other content is taught in Spanish. And the way that our program goes is that we do have self-contained bilingual teachers. So our pre-K teacher teaches pre-K all day. Our kindergarten teacher teaches that one class all day. And then we'll transition between English and Spanish based on the time of the day or the content taught. The 90-10 model, which is also referred to as an 80-20 model, continues to add English each year. So we'll add 10% of English in second grade, for example. So our second grade classroom is 60-40. Our third, fourth, and fifth grade classrooms are 50-50 model classrooms where we have self-contained. So the same teacher will teach the whole class all day. And then the content will be in Spanish in the morning and then English in the afternoon, but it'll be with the same teacher. So in a 90-10 model program, there is more Spanish at the younger grades, and then the percentage of English increases by grade level. I've also seen program models that will have 80-20 in kindergarten, first and second, and then we'll jump to 50-50. So there's no exact formula for how that works, and a lot of that really depends on staffing, on resources, and then on the needs of the community as measured by data.
Thank you. So and it's important, I think, I was thinking about Holy Family, and I was thinking about schools that have similar populations. And I was thinking of one in Texas that also started like yours, 50-50. I went into a Spanish immersion, 90-10, 80-20, because their community was, most of the community was heritage Spanish, which means that the students, we did not immerse them into Spanish in the first years, they would never really become proficient because they would default into English, the language of privilege, unfortunately, hegemonically. So, but there's other communities where they have, thinking of the ones in Minneapolis or Milwaukee, where they have large groups of English learners, and they want to immerse them 50-50, so they actually, because they're not exposed to English in the community, and it's important for them to learn it, learn enough English by the time they get to third grade. So that's why we say that it's very important to look at your demographics, as Larkin was saying. So when we think about demographics, the dual language immersion programs, for example, this is from a Texas guidebook that they created. So they talk about their classification is dual language one-way immersion is where most of the students are identified as emergent bilingual. So most of them are exposed to both languages since birth, common in the state. The dual language for them is where we have emergent bilinguals or Spanish dominant students with a portion, 30% or so, of English only students. It doesn't matter if they're Hispanic background or not, but if they're not exposed to both languages, they're considered English dominant students. So So you look at your populations and you also make decisions based on that. So Larkin already spoke about the organization of language of instruction and subjects. So it can be in dual language Catholic schools, the most common one is by subjects because we only have one cohort, one class per grade. In other places where it's self-contained, meaning the teacher teaches throughout the day bilingually, they might do the language allocation by units or by blocks. So there's different scholars throughout the country that have proposed different models based on your population and your teacher capacities. The curriculum choices and pedagogical orientation is also very important. So for instance, there are preschools in the country that are dual language Catholic that are play-based. Others are Montessori. Others use a more traditional format of literacy. And others have to adapt to the diocese curriculum or to the choices of the diocese or the state. So therefore, those will be considerations. But it's important to remember that a resource is not the same as curriculum. So even if you purchase a resource that's bilingual, you still need to create a curriculum and you still need to provide a stipend for the teachers that are going to develop that curriculum for the first time in both languages. And of course, the experience of the teachers is also a factor because, Larkin, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to kind of use some examples of what I've seen at Holy Family. And when I started at Holy Family, as I mentioned, we were a 50-50 model with teen teachers, and we transitioned to a 90-10 model. And that was also based on the population of our students. We were seeing that students were not based on our the student, we were assessing their language acquisition skills, and they were just not getting as strong in the Spanish language, being predominantly English speakers. Even our student population is 70% Latino Hispanic, but most of them are English dominant even by the time that they're in kindergarten. And so really feeling the need to increase the language of instruction to Spanish earlier on so that they have that fluency to be able to acquire content in the higher grades. But that being said, looking at our curriculum was really important as well. And what we factored in was the ability of the teachers, was the student population. And we started kind of writing our own curriculum maps and looking into, based on our language, content allocation plan, the number of minutes in each classroom, and we started creating kind of a scope and sequence, and then worked with the Institute for Teaching for Biliteracy to create biliteracy unit frameworks. And ultimately our teachers realized that this is a lot of work, the bandwidth, and then also we have some amazing, wonderful, high energy teachers, but for all intents and purposes are newer teachers and newer dual language teachers. And so it was very ambitious for us to, and we did plan time for it, but to have our teachers, really start and create super robust curriculum maps when they're newer to the profession and they're learning things like organization and classroom management. And so our school made a decision to purchase a curriculum that it was in alignment with our mission, and we felt would serve our community. And with that purchase of a curriculum, we also had to look at how we were doing the language allocation, with the content areas as well. But ultimately that, the teachers spent the time scaffolding the curriculum and looking at how the curriculum can meet the needs of their students, rather than the creation of the curriculum overall, which has led to an increase in our Spanish reading test scores, and then also our language proficiency scores, which we're really excited about.
Thank you. So of course, we included it last, but it's very important to develop a marketing plan. And here are some examples. Larkin, would you like to talk about your own experience in connection to this?
Yeah, being the only fully dual language program school in Seattle, it really is important that people are aware of us. A lot of families would come and say, I really wanted a bilingual education, but I didn't even know your school existed. And so really spreading the word about the great things that you're doing at your school, the partnerships that you have, for example, with Twin CS, you know, showing the community that you are knowledgeable in dual language, and that it's not just a program where they can speak some Spanish, you know, and also kind of educating the community in what a dual language program looks like. For example, a lot of people will come to the school and say, okay, so they have Spanish classes, I hear, and really kind of saying, no, this is a dual language program. So this is an immersion program where students are learning, you know, we have high academic expectations for students in 2 languages, in both English and Spanish, and then also the why behind the program. We do have 2 kind of marketing plans really for different communities. For example, we have kind of 2 taglines. One is, you know, give your child an edge. You know, a lot of families want to have a dual language experience because they want their children to be bilingual. They themselves are bilingual. You know, it's great in the world, and it'll really set them up for success. And then we also have a marketing tagline, for example, that's Es nuestra herencia. This is our heritage. A lot of our families who speak Spanish as a first language want their children to develop academic Spanish, not just spoken Spanish. They don't want their heritage to be lost in the educational system of the United States. And so we have brochures, we've been at fairs, our website has been a huge part of our marketing, and really that's where most people find our school, is through our website. So making sure that on your website it's saying exactly what you want people to know right when they go to the website, and then having your marketing materials in both English and Spanish. It is essential for the preservation of the program and the adherence to the mission of the school to serve communities where they speak English and they speak Spanish. That's the essence of a 2-way immersion program. And so making sure that we're not just marketing to people who would like to have a dual language program on the internet, but that we are getting out into the communities, that we're spreading the word. For example, we have an ambassador parents program, de Padres Embajadores, and they spread the word to other members of our you know, Latino Hispanic community to be able to talk about our school, what we're doing, and then how we're supporting all families. And we've really seen through this marketing plan, have really seen our school grow. For example, when I started at Holy Family, we had just about 100 students, and next year we have 215 students enrolled for next year. And that's, you know, thanks to a marketing plan, hiring a development director who is from the Latino Hispanic community, eats and breathes and loves dual language programs, and can speak to dual language programs. And that's essential for the growth of this program. It's just making sure people are informed, people know you exist, and people know what your goals are.
Thank you. Very informative. So finally, our timeline, as we said the first time we met, we attempt to gather the data and the information early in the fall, so that by the winter we have a decision made of when we're starting dual language. And then during this early spring, we plan. So this is a time when we go over those 6 steps that we talked about today. After that, we move on with implementing at every step. So that's what we can share with you today in terms of planning for a dual language school, Catholic school. This is our contact information. Dr. Carrie Fuller couldn't join us today. Her 1-year-old son was sick, so she had to take him. He's fine, but she had to take him to the doctor. So we thank her for helping us prepare for this presentation. Some of the slides were created by her, and we thank Ms. Tem Larkin for this amazing moment of sharing from her own experience. And once again, contact us if you have any questions, and we look forward to presenting or meeting with you for our last session, which will be in the implementation itself, the last stage. And now we're going to stop the recording and have time for questions. Thank you.